Welcome to Connection Artist, the podcast for building better relationships by design. Love and human connection are fundamental needs for all of us, but how do we cultivate lasting, emotionally healthy, fulfilling relationships with ourselves and others? I'm Anna Luca, and I invite you to join me in meeting everyday people with diverse backgrounds and ages who all have one thing in common: a genuine passion for fostering meaningful connections. You'll hear their heartwarming stories and practical advice for building lasting marriages, lifelong friendships, and self-love. In this season 1, we sit down with 10 couples, learn how they met, and hear the secrets behind how they've built lasting marriages. Their insights will inspire and enlighten you. I also interview guests who found and maintained warm, lasting friendships for decades, and they're sharing how they did it. And lastly, we can't forget the importance of growing a loving relationship with ourselves, so we discuss building self-love and confidence. I've brought together a fantastic lineup of guests for you to meet who will share their unique stories and invaluable communication and relationship advice. Together, we're learning the secrets to building more meaningful, fulfilling relationships, one conversation at a time. I'm Anna Luca, and I invite you to join me in becoming a connection artist. All right, welcome back to the podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me, Dick Young. Dick Young is here, and in my previous relationship interviews, I've had couples on who've been married for 20, 30, 40 years. Dick and his wife, Carolyn, have been married were married for 68 years. And unfortunately, we lost Carolyn a couple years ago, but I wanted to still share their amazing love story that lasted their entire lives for anyone listening who aspires to have that kind of a relationship in their life. What does it take to have a 68-year marriage? Well, I have the rare opportunity to interview Dick Young here, who's gracious enough to share about his life story and the love story that he had with Carolyn. Although we won't have Carolyn's perspectives represented here, we do have Dick, and I'm very excited for this episode because he's a very special, dear friend of mine for many years. And with that, I want to welcome you, Dick. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this with me.
Thanks, Anna.
All right. So starting off, I like to ask how you met Carolyn. How did both of you meet?
Well, this was a fraternity term party, and I had a great date, and she was sitting there on my left, and I was at the head of the table, and Carolyn was on my right, and her date was next to her. Well, if you ever heard of bird dogging, this is where you pick on the other person's date and see if you're going to connect or not. So somehow we did that.
What do you mean pick on the other person's date?
I picked on Carolyn and got talking to her, and I ignored my date, and I spent the whole term party talking to Carolyn and ignoring my date, which was a terrible thing to do, and I grieve it to this day because the girl was a wonderful girl.
That's really, so that this was something that was commonly done back in the day. Bird dogging, you called it?
Yes, bird dogging.
Okay. It's common enough that there was a term for it, at least. Yeah. Okay, so you were picking
on the other person's date.
Carolyn. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
And so I kind of liked her, so I asked her out, and that started a relationship. And this went on for quite a while, and we were getting more involved. And Carolyn decided that she wanted to try somebody else. So I was always calling her. I was inviting her out. I wasn't calling her. We'd go out on Saturday night or Friday night, and then I'd invite her out for the next weekend. Well, she decided she was going to date somebody else, so she says, call me on Wednesday. And I says, oh, no. So I didn't call on Wednesday. I called on Saturday.
Just to defy her?
Just to set my limits.
Okay.
And we visited on the phone for a while, and I said good night. And then allowed a week to go by, and then I called her for going out, and she said yes. And that ended that tension, kind of starting to fall in love, but yet not wanting to take the risk.
Mm. And you were how old? You and Carolyn were how old at the time?
I was 20, and she was 19 or 20.
Okay, so very young. And then now you're 90 years old, right?
90 years old.
And then Carolyn was how old at the time of her passing?
87.
87. Okay, continue on. So you finally took her on a date.
So then we went back on a date, and we dated for 6 months, and then we decided, I lived in California, and she lived in Michigan. So we decided to take the summer off and see where we were at. And it comes towards the end of summer, I invited her to California to meet my parents. She came to California to meet my parents. We got engaged, and in December, we got married.
You dated for 6 months, and then you
Yes.
proposed. Okay, so this is a great segue into my next question. How did you know that she was the one for you?
I don't think you really know. Important thing was to do things together and things that I liked and that she liked. So we flew kites. We went to the lake to walk the beaches. We went to Lake Michigan. We went to the symphony. We went to dances, and that kind of cemented it. Each could agree to like or did like.
Okay. I do recall that oftentimes, you guys were always doing things together, like cross-country skiing or, traveling, other things like that. But then you also had your own separate hobbies, too. I remember Carolyn liked to do painting and other things like that with the girls. And I think you used to have like a workout group of guys and such. You guys would go to the gym or whatever together. And
yeah, we very important to have, in a relationship, to have common interest and values. When I asked her to get married, and I said, hey, do you want to get married? She said, yes, but. And I said, but what? She says, we got to go to church. Well, I'm an atheist. I'm an agnostic. All my religion ended at age 8 with bad experiences. So, okay, I wanted to get married. I'll go to church. I can fake it.
And she wanted you to go regularly to church with her?
Yeah, we went every week. We did go to church every week. I would fall asleep. My friends would bet on me when my head would fall down. As soon as the sermon started, I had only so many seconds left. If you're smart about church, you're going to build community in church. The religion you can take or leave as your heart and soul are inclined to do. But it's very important to build friends. Very important to build friends. Most people go to church and go out. You got to build friends in church, and then church has some resonance. And then speaking of church, the big things in church that helped us was we did marriage encounter. It's a Catholic tradition. It didn't help much.
What is that? Is that like a course or something?
It was a course for married couples.
Okay.
We're called Marriage Encounter. And then we did a thing called Cursillo after about 30 years of marriage. And Cursillo was very important to us because it was the first time I experienced maybe the presence or energy of God. And I said, well, maybe there is a God. And Carolyn had the same experience. So that started to deepen my relationship with God. Then the biggest crux of all that happened in our lives, now 40 years ago, was the death of our son. With that, he had a very troubled life. We had 2 children. The daughter was very capable and smart, and she was younger. And the son was older, and he only had 5 years of sobriety and a good life. And then he died. Now, we were lost. This is one of the biggest turning points in our marriage. So, in all marriages, I think we have turning points. Mm-hmm. And most marriages, when a child dies, ends in divorce because you blame each other. Mm. What happened to us is we went and saw the minister, saw the counselor, and friends. And friends get tired of hearing you whine. Yeah. Carolyn did her default. She went to books. And she tripped into this book called Healing into Life and Death by Stephen Levine. And she read it, and she started meditating. Because we would spend the morning, I'd do a little Bible reading, she'd do something else. And so Carolyn went to books, found this book, started meditating. A month later, I saw a shift in her countenance. I grabbed that book, I read it. I started meditating every morning. I'd read something out of the Bible. She'd read a poem or something. Then we'd sit in the chair for 20 minutes before work. We did this without any expectations. Healing the Life and Death book by Stephen Levine convinced us to do it. We did it. And we're both type A's. We don't sit. But we did. When all else fails, do something else. 3 years later, after doing this on a daily basis, I got out of the chair one day. I said, the pain is gone. And that pain had a lot of tentacles because, you do things wrong to your children and you're guilty and grief and shame and blah. And then you got the death and you got the loss and you got all that goes with that. So it's a very complex, children's death in a marriage is very complex. So I asked Carolyn where she was at. And she went inside. You only know this inside. You know this by examining your heart and kind of soul. She was 90% healed. And that convinced us that this was the path.
Meditation, centering prayer.
Stay on meditation, stay on centering prayer. And we continued that for the rest of our lives. What that did is it healed the pain of that loss. It healed other pains and experiences because you got a ton of them in a marriage. It's the most difficult relationship anybody can have. You got a lot of freedom then, and you're transformed.
And so when you would do these meditations daily, it sounds like you also communicated afterwards?
We communicated. We would spend, as time went on, we'd spend about an hour to an hour and a half. And we'd do meditation for 20 or 30 minutes. We would read some book. Together. And then we'd discuss the book.
Okay.
And then we'd meditate.
So it sounds like you were spending mindful, quality time together on self-healing or self-improvement every day, but doing it together, finding a common activity that you both were committed to doing together for the betterment of yourselves,
yes,
personally and as a unit, as a couple.
Yes.
That's fantastic. That's good. So whether it's centering prayer for anyone listening or meditation or something else, mindful, it sounds like if you're facing a huge boulder in your life together, such as losing a child or whatever major crisis might have happened, maybe think about, and whoever's listening, maybe think about something that you can do together with your partner to both heal together and do so in a healthy way. Before you had tried that, were there arguments that you guys were having about what had happened, or what was the dynamic before you started to together do this activity?
We did not get into the blame game. To escape the pain, you blame the other person. It started. The blame game started. But we got into centering prayer fast enough that we caught it. Because meditation makes you aware of your processes, mm-hmm, and gives you some time before you blab your mouth off and tell the other person what they did wrong. And that was a great gift. I can remember that coming up, but I can't remember it being acted out, mm-hmm, thanks to meditation. The first thing typically healed in meditation is grief. Mm. And when we did it, we had no idea.
That it would heal your grief.
It will heal your grief.
I bet the conversations, too, the thoughtful conversations did help as well.
All helped.
Yeah.
Centering prayer will reveal these issues if it's time for them to be revealed. Mm-hmm. And if there's a God, in my experience, God is only gives you a little bit of those things at a time. My last big one was abandonment. Mm.
So that was something that you were struggling to heal in the course of your marriage, heal from.
Yeah.
What are some of a few of the major issues that you've experienced or seen in marriages that impede a healthy marriage? One is kind of like getting over your own sense of abandonment at some point of your life. As you mentioned, were there any other kind of personal hardships that you felt were holding you or Carolyn back from having the best marriage you could?
Well, trust is huge in marriage, it evolves slowly over time. The level of trust. Trust has many levels.
Mm-hmm.
The consequences of abandonment are big. And trust is one of the biggest ones.
Mm-hmm.
And both Carolyn and myself were abandoned at a high level as children.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people are.
Yes.
It's a common thing that many people, whether they experience it in obvious ways or in subtle ways that they felt abandoned. I'm glad that you're bringing this up.
So fear, tremendous amount of fear, because you're hypervigilant, because you're going to stay safe, because you're always reading the other person
Mm-hmm.
to see if they're going to pull away.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't trust them. So fear, hypervigilance, trust, and the biggest one of all is you can't love. And that comes from childhood.
Mm-hmm.
So our love started very slowly. We were friends more than lovers.
The first 6 months?
First years.
Oh, wow. So you got married and you still felt more like friends?
Yes.
Okay.
Our relationship was friends, and friends for a long time.
Even in the course
Because
of your
we're both abandoned kids and we can't love.
Mm.
That's one of the big things about love. You can't love when you've been abandoned at a high level.
Mm-hmm.
It's a roadblock.
So
you got to deal with love.
How did you and Carolyn go about overcoming that then?
Well, a lot of work. I have a PowerPoint on how I did it. And I do, because I've given it many times.
Yeah.
But working with the hypervigilance, with trust, with fear, and awareness of how you're responding with love and not love. Because you can really trust that person by the time you're 50 years in a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
if it's been anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
So you got that built in. So you slowly start to trust.
Was the first stage just both of you just recognizing that you guys both had that impediment to your...
No, it came about, as I said, I didn't know anything about abandonment. I thought abandonment, I didn't know the word at that point in my life. That's a word that's not readily talked about in society, and especially to young people. My parents told me my childhood was perfectly normal. Well, it wasn't. Of course, it took a lifetime to know it. So with the centering prayer deal, when you get yourself kind of cleaned up a little bit, centering prayer will unload another one for you.
Emotionally cleaned up. So it sounds like, and did you and Carolyn pursue your own healing separately or healing together, the same issue
Both.
that you had? Okay. So you're each doing your own work and also doing work together on healing your abandonment wounds. Did it involve talking directly to each other as far as like, hey, these are the fears that I have in our relationship, openly discussing those things and reassuring each other of your fears or insecurities? Did it involve therapists? Like what were some of the just high levels, some of the things you tried?
All of it. Books. A lot of books.
Reading the same books together and discussing them on this topic?
Yeah.
Okay. And just having open, honest conversations.
And then meditating.
And meditating.
Because you're turning it over.
Mm-hmm.
And in the meantime, we've done Buddhist and became very trained Buddhist meditators, done Judaism and studied their Kabbalah and Hinduism. So we've played with a lot of these.
Okay. So you've just explored a lot of different mindsets and ways of perceiving yourself and others in the world.
I think our faith journey was a big part of it.
Okay.
Because we were both willing to explore all this stuff. We did it together. We went to India together and stayed in an ashram. We went down to Common Ground and out to California and out to Boston and got trained in Buddhism. And
So you guys, it sounds like both of you had an open mind to self-improvement.
yes.
And I think that's key,
Yeah.
because if only one of you had chosen to improve yourself and work on yourself, and then the other one stayed behind in their own patterns, their own ways, it would not have worked out well, I imagine.
No, it wouldn't.
It
You
takes-
have to have common values, common interests, and common willing to work together.
Yeah. So a willingness to better yourselves, but do it together for the benefit of your relationship.
It's so funny to look at that, because she would pick something, well, let's just say Buddhism. Well, then, so we'd explore Buddhism. And then I would explore, I'd get a concept, and let's do Hinduism. So let's go to India and let's get some stuff in India. And then she'd come up, let's go to Temple Israel.
So both of you guys, it sounds like from the beginning, you were open to each other's interests and curiosities.
Yeah.
So that also could have been
High
another,
level, big deal.
Yeah. So that also could have been another factor in maintaining a long-lasting relationship, is being open to exploring, not just physically exploring the world, but also emotionally exploring the world that's out there together, like spiritually exploring the world.
Yeah.
How did you guys approach disagreements, like when things would come up about each other that you didn't like, or
I'll tell you one thing that I'm just reflecting now.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is true or not true. We came to Minnesota and made a conscious decision to stay here, and not knowing one soul. So now it's not easy to leave. Carolyn's parents were dead. Mine were in California, and we did not want to go there. So I couldn't run home to Mama. Mama would kill me. And Carolyn can't go home to her mom and dad. So there was no way out
of a marriage.
And in the beginning of the marriage, we got along. Well, I was in the Air Force for 4 years. We got along great in the Air Force. The Air Force provided a great security environment, safe pay, housing, medical, so on. Even emotional, because you got the officers club. Came back here and went to work for a CPA firm, Arthur Anderson, then kids, and cars, and houses, and I couldn't do it all. And then the fights really started. And I didn't know what to do, so I was just acting out of fear.
Fights about what?
What?
What topics would you guys fight about? Was it financial
everything.
topics? Everything.
Yeah. The car, the house, children.
Keeping up with everything.
Keeping up. And so how Carolyn got this courage. We were 25 years old, maybe 28. We're going to go to divorce court, and we're going to go to therapy.
It's one or the other.
It's one or the other. She gave me a choice. I had very few options.
Around what year into your marriage?
This is about 6 years into the marriage.
Okay, so she gave you the ultimatum around 6 years. It wasn't going well. You were having fights. And it was either go to therapy or go to divorce court. You choose, Dick.
Yeah. And she had the courage to do this. I've often marveled at it now. With really no resources. She didn't have a job. How's she going to support herself? We had a kid or two. I reluctantly chose therapy first to fix her, and then the therapist called that out on me, and now we're going to fix you, Dick.
Of course, the problem must be her, right? It's never yourself.
It's always her. And for you women, it's always the men.
Yeah, it's always the finger pointing.
Yes. And so that was 5 years of therapy every week.
Couples years,
and
or a couple therapy.
Reduced my anger, resentment, and revenge at a high level. And that started to calm our marriage down. The tensions were still there. Mm-hmm. The next biggest turning point was the Cursillo. Another big turning point in there was a thing called the Enneagrams. Enneagram is a personality test. It's a little like Myers-Briggs, but it kind of nails you. And for me, I'm an Enneagram 3. Carolyn was an Enneagram 3, And we would be happy little people always trying to please you and denying anything about ourselves. We were phonies, both of us.
Because people pleasers are phonies.
I worked on that for a long time. That was a big turning point. Crucial, Enneagrams, therapy. We continued therapy for the rest of our lives because of our history of childhood abuse and abandonment, both of us. And therapy's been a big thing to us.
Did you continue it even during good times in your marriage?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not just for bad times?
Because we were working on individual issues.
Okay, so would you see an individual therapist and then also see a couples therapist?
Individual therapist.
Okay, so you'd go separately, Carolyn would go separately?
Yeah.
Okay. And
then the death of our son and getting into meditation. Those are about the 5 turning points in our lives that we survived and thrived.
how did your marriage look? So it sounds like at the beginning, the marriage was a little rocky because you were having arguments, disagreements, unhealed traumas from your past that were carrying over into the relationship, and you had to work through therapy and start thinking of creative ways to heal yourselves and also heal as a couple, kind of a thing. How did the middle of your marriage look, the middle timeline of your marriage look compared to the later years where you guys had been consistently working on yourselves for decades by that point? Give us an idea of what lifelong self-development, what that produces for a marriage.
Once our daughter had graduated from college and we were, in quote, free of that responsibility, and our son had died, we were then each other.
It was just you two.
But the centering prayer thing that we had gotten into was so powerful, because once you've been healed of a pain, like the death of a child, you're not going to quit it. So we didn't quit it, and we continued on, opening ourselves to finding character defects.
Within yourselves.
Within ourselves.
Not pointing it out.
Well, I told Carolyn some point in there, I said, Carolyn, now you've had 40 years of working on my character defects for me. It's time to quit, and I'm going to start working on a few character defects for you.
Okay.
And she agreed.
Okay.
She realized she had gone probably beyond the bounds.
So she had been kind of pointing out in you over the decades, like, hey, you're doing this again, or you're doing that, and it's coming from that kind of a place, and now you were turning it back on her, like, Carolyn, there's some things that I want you to work on now.
Yep. Okay. I was crucified. Now it's your turn to be crucified.
Okay. And she was open to it? She was like, all right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Well, she'd been working, too. I mean, because we both went to therapy. Mm-hmm. She had 250 sessions, and I had 250 sessions, 6 years into the marriage. Mm-hmm. So this is the guts or the power of our marriage. You know, you can go to the symphony, and we did that, and we went to the opera, and we did that, and we traveled to New York and to Europe and to India, and we did that. So we did all that stuff, but all the way through that, there was the core of meditation. We didn't know it, but that meditation will not only heal you of character defects, which is a great gift, it will also heal the other person's character defects. And in so doing, you're both freer, and your marriage is transformed. Mm-hmm. And now your love is deeper, more authentic, and more trusting, and less fearful, and so on, and so on. And your marriage is a big joy.
Mm-hmm. I think studying attachment theory, too, underlying a lot of people's relational challenges is deep-seated fear of something, fear of abandonment, fear of judgment, fear of criticism, fear of not being enough, fear of not being lovable, things like that. There's some sort of fear. So it sounds like what helped both of you is, however you did it, whether it's through meditation or centering prayer or books or therapy, was really scratching the base of where is that fear stemming from for both of us.
That's right.
And getting to the root cause of what is it what fears are holding you back from showing up as your most loving selves, connecting with other people, each other specifically, connecting with each other on a more authentic, deeper level. It sounds like it's not until both of you guys were willing to do that self-exploration and self-healing journey and have a mind for curiosity of yourselves that you were able to finally address the root causes holding you back, and only then could you guys live a more free marriage and a more loving marriage. Is that accurate?
Yeah, and the root cause of it was our childhood.
Yeah, for so many people it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was where the root cause was. And so the more that we exposed the situations of the childhood, and the more we opened to it, and felt it, and dealt with it, and turned it over, accepted it, forgiven the parents. They tried the best they could.
Yeah. With what they had.
Yeah.
They tried the best they could with what they had.
They tried the best they could.
It sounds like it took you guys both decades. It wasn't a quick process to overcome this.
Well, first to find it.
First to find it, yeah.
It took about 40 or 50 years. And then another 30 or 40 years to deal with it. But once we started to deal with the things surrounding abandonment, that really whoosh. And also to have a greater vision. Carolyn always had a greater vision, so she got books on love. 8 Habits of Love, Love 2.0, and so we worked those books.
Okay.
In between me pushing family of origin issues.
Yeah. When I met you, you guys were both in your 70s, mid-70s, and now you're 90 and she was 87. You guys seemed like such a role model of a couple, like such a powerhouse couple.
Oh, that's because we've done all that work.
I know. But
otherwise, we would have been basket cased and divorced.
Yeah, well, I always admired you both. You became like grandparents to me. You were so loving to everyone, so patient with everyone, very patient with myself and others. And you modeled love, not just with each other, but also with other people. It seems like whatever work you both did, maybe there were additional benefits to your social circle or your broader interpersonal life happiness as well, doing all this work.
Well, the social circle certainly helped because they were common friends. But very few marriages will do what we did. And so, you're not going to get what we got through necessarily a social circle. You're going to have to get it by wanting to dig. The purpose of marriage, I'm going to put it in 12-step language because it's much clearer. Purpose of marriage is to help each other uncover their character defects and then help each other deal with them and heal them. That's the purpose of marriage.
So do you feel like it's each other's responsibility to fix the other person then? To be each other's
Carolyn
therapist?
had a program to fix me.
Okay.
And she thought she could, and she's owned it.
Okay, but do you think that was effective, coming at it with the...
Yes, it was.
For you guys, it was?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
And I was willing to accept most of it.
Because I can understand how it might be frustrating to some couples if one partner in the marriage or relationship is constantly trying to fix you, not accepting you for who you are or how you are. And, there are certain things that you should not accept that are unhealthy behaviors or toxic behaviors. But it's interesting that for both of you guys were both willing to take on a role where you're trying to fix the other person, and you both were receptive to it.
Well, that's what I said earlier, that there were few options for me or Carolyn. So there are few options. The few options really helped a lot. So we couldn't run away. Because the first inclination is to run away, and especially when somebody's trying to fix you and telling you all your dumb stuff.
The first inclination when a marriage is going south.
And get a divorce, go home.
Okay.
And think your life is going to get better. And I've lived long enough, and I've been through enough divorces with enough people, and it isn't any better. It's worse. We keep piling it on. And it's one of the good things that we don't live much past 90 because we've piled too much on. I think one of the reasons that I'm alive today and as relatively healthy as I am is because I haven't continued to pile on. And by that I mean bury emotional issues and deny them.
So you recognize your issues and opportunities and you deal with them rather than denying it.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Oh, it's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge. Well, here's what happens with this. If you deal with these things, let's just do 2 or 3 medium ones that you're going to face, you're going to feel, you're going to turn over to somebody or something, and you're going to invite somebody in, a higher power. And I always think you got to meditate to do this. Once you get 2 or 3 healed, there will be an internal level of freedom, and that freedom's the hook. Then they keep coming. The world is relentless. It's going to keep coming until you die. Mm-hmm. You can do it by burying everything, or you can do it by dealing. It's that simple.
And it sounds
Not so pretty.
Yeah, well, no, it's beautiful that, like, having that reflection now. It's beautiful that you've put the pieces together, is what I'm getting at, is that you've solved the puzzle of where so many people struggle in life. And the beautiful part is that you've had enough years under your belt where you've been able to see what the picture is actually of life.
I've known you for now 20 years. Took you through ambassadorial scholarship. Watch your career. I know you're exceedingly bright and you're exceedingly capable.
I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
So back to my last question. So you made it through life together with Carolyn.
We made it through life together. Okay, you can say that for the first 40 years, but the next 40 years or so, such a joy, such a love.
What was
such a wonderful journey.
What was that like? Like that, how would you describe the quality of your marriage on the other side of what this all amounted to?
Give me your hand. So Carolyn was in the hospital and died. It took 15 days. I held her hand for 15 days. I didn't run, because one of the things in abandonment is you're going to run. I could love. And what a joy that was.
I think that's what people want at the end of their lives, to know that when it's their time to leave this earth, they're leaving it hand in hand with the person who loves them the most in life and who's been there for them. That is the last person that they see, the last person that they're with, the person who's with them every step of the way. And you were that for Carolyn at the end of her life when she chose to go into hospice.
And I let her do what she wanted to do. She wanted parties because she didn't like the hospital food. So we had nighttime parties.
At the hospice?
In the hospital, before hospice.
Okay.
And then in the hospice, too. In the hospice. But then she went to a private hospice. And there we didn't have any parties. She was too far gone. But, by holding her hand, I think, you don't know really what's going on as she goes down. And she wasn't sure she was going down. And we always had hope.
That she would recover.
But I think it made it easier for her as I lived and watched this process. And I gave her the courage to let life go. Big.
Wow. To let the person that's been with you all those years, the love of your life, to let them go. That's hard.
And let her go.
That's hard.
Instead of trying to fix her. That was my last not fixing her.
What is life like now, after, like, post Carolyn? Now that you're a single at 90, I think you were both 87, right?
I was 88.
Okay, you were 88, she was 87. What's it like now in your life, losing the love of your life?
Well, the 2 longest and biggest are sad and lonely.
Is that what it feels like now?
You're quite lonely, and you're quite sad. So you have to deal. Loneliness and the sadness are underlying things that kind of like to hang around.
Mm-hmm. Is there any...
I have been loved by friends. Oh, my God. I have been so loved by friends, and that's helped so much.
These last few years?
Yeah, so much. I can't tell you how much my friends have kind of carried me.
So for anyone experiencing the loss of a loved one, hopefully you've built, if that applies to anyone listening, hopefully you've built a support network of friends or family to help you through that new stage of life.
Yeah.
Do you have any lasting advice, last piece of advice?
Giving yourself away. I've always been good at giving myself away.
What do you mean?
And, like our relationship. So instead of saying, no, Anna, because it got in trouble, let's face it. You're willing to face it. I'm willing to face it. Mm-hmm. And here we sit.
Yeah. One thing for the listening audience, there was a period, very briefly, I won't get into details, but I had met Dick and Carolyn about 20 years ago. And then there's a period of time, the last 10 years, where I had parted ways. And then I was the one who reached back out to Dick. And I was honest. These were some things that I didn't know I needed to work on. I've worked on them. I want to acknowledge them, and I want to apologize that it amounted to our relationship dissipating. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to share this with Carolyn before she passed away. And I wish I would have realized this, done this work on my own sooner, to have reconnected with both of you sooner in my life. But at least we have now.
Yes, we do.
I very much appreciate you.
It's joyful.
Thank you. I very much appreciate you continuing to share your life with me, and how just what an honor it is to hear your story. And I know it's going to inspire listeners as well. But inspired me, really. You and Carolyn have always been an inspiration to me when it comes to a relationship, because you were always honest with me about how hard you both had to work. I saw the fruits of it at the end, or the end result of it, when I met you in your 70s and 80s. But you were always honest that it wasn't an easy road. And to get there, to be as joyful as you both were in your relationship. And I was always witnessing joy amongst you both. And I shared holidays with both of you and such. I always admired both of you as being such a perseverant couple and such a loving couple. But there's a lot of work that we don't see. When you see people who've made it that long in their relationships and are still joyful together, there's a lot of work likely that went into that.
I didn't know we had holidays together.
Oh, yeah, of course. We spent Christmases together, Thanksgivings together. Yeah.
I told you were a daughter.
No, I have pictures. Yeah, I baked cookies with Carolyn. I painted with you guys. I still have some of those paintings. There are a lot of memories that I really cherished with you guys.
Oh, be darned.
Yeah, you forgot these. I'm so sad that you did, but they happened. I have photographic proof of them. Yeah, we did a lot. We went cross-country skiing in the wintertime. We went to Aspen, Colorado together. We did things. But yeah, no, it was an honor to be welcomed into your family. I just want to say that I appreciate having you back in my life. I appreciate you sharing your journey of love.
Welcome.
I'm very grateful to you. So thank you so much for participating in this podcast. I'm going to cherish this episode for many years to come. Thank you.
You're welcome.
As we wrap up another episode of Connection Artist, I want to express my gratitude to you for listening and exploring how we can all grow and better connect with one another. I created this podcast to support your relationship success and happiness. If you found value in this episode, here's how you can support me and help spread the word about this podcast. First, subscribe to this podcast and share it with 10 friends. If you share this education with 10 people and they share it with 10 people and so on, we can grow this movement of creating a more loving and caring world. If you'd like to show your support on a personal level, visit www.analuca.com. That's ANALUCA.com. LUCA. Explore my heart-centric products and education, from poetry books to online courses, art prints to apparel. Every purchase directly enables me to continue producing episodes and sharing these valuable stories and insights with you, because this podcast is not free to create. Please consider buying something I've made with my heart and soul to connect with you. Discover handmade heart-shaped art prints and hoodies featuring my exclusive Crypto Love Drops collection at www.artbyanaluka.com. Read about the inspiration behind these beautiful heart artworks at cryptolovedrops.com. These make really great, unique gifts for your friends, family, and spouse, and serve as a lasting symbolic reminder of your love for them. Or if you enjoy journaling or you'd like to start, get my 15-minute daily guided journal for confident mindset titled Yes, I Can. If you want more stories, buy my poetry book, The People We Meet, available on Amazon or directly on my website, artbyanaluka.com. Just click on the Books tab. Listen to my music album called Reprise on Spotify. Fun fact, the opening music track that you heard on this podcast is actually composed by me and is featured in my music album. Also, don't forget to check out my hand-illustrated apparel line at www.laughstoself.com. I hand-designed really funny, cute illustrations that made me laugh, but also serve the purpose of spreading humor, love, and connection with others. That apparel line of hoodies, t-shirts, and sweaters are exclusively available only on my website, so if you want to wear something unique, check out laughstoself.com. Connect with me on social media for podcast and life updates. You can follow me on Instagram or TikTok at AnaLukaOfficial. And lastly, if you're based in the United States and would like to be interviewed on the podcast, send me a message at myconnectionartist@gmail.com to potentially join me as a guest on this show in the future. Remember to subscribe to this podcast and leave a 5-star review. It helps a lot in reaching more listeners like you who can benefit from this information. Thank you for being a part of this Connection Artist community. I'm wishing you so much love and happiness in your relationships. Stay tuned for the next episode.